So thank you everyone for being here today. Our SCOLT Student Advisory Board for the Committee on Learning and Teaching got together over this past spring semester to discuss kind of faculty best practices based on their own perceptions as students and being in the classroom. And I would like to note that pretty much most of the SCOLT board just actually graduated in our May graduation. Gabriella Patterson is one of the members of the SCOLT advisory board who's taking the lead on presenting all of the students' information. A lot of the students did graduate, so they're now working this summer and doing lots of things. So Gabby's taking the lead for us today. And Gabby also just graduated with a double major in psychology and health promotion and wellness management, also from the honors program here at SUNY Oswego. So I would like to just introduce her, and she's going to kind of go through our student voices driving faculty best practices.
Hi, as Dr. Harris just said, I'm Gabriella, and the purpose of this session would be to inform faculty about what students need to succeed in class. So I'll talk about what works, what doesn't work, and how you can make learning more effective and inclusive for all students. Slide, please. So the first thing that I'd like to touch on, this is going to be a constant theme throughout this presentation, is feedback. And so why students' feedback matters beyond course evaluation is the main reason is because it promotes continuous learning. Regular feedback throughout the semester allows students to make meaningful changes throughout the course rather than waiting till the end of the semester to be like, okay, it's over now, I can't really do anything about it. I kind of just had a similar experience this semester where it's just like I didn't know where I was in the class and like how well I was doing or like what I needed to work on until the end of the semester. And there's not a lot that you can do about it because the semester's over. I can't talk to my professor and be like, hey, how can I improve? The grades are kind of finished. With regular feedback, it can also tell you if you're on track versus not on track, which can be very motivational for you. So if you're on track, you know that you're doing something correct, and then you're going to keep doing it because you're like, okay, you're on track to like pass the class. Versus when you're not on track, having that regular feedback from your professor lets you know like, hey, I need to change something. I need to do something to improve so that I don't end up failing the class and so I can get the most knowledge out of the class. So that's like a motivational aspect of it. Also, regular feedback is empowering for students because when you give us actionable suggestions, which I'll talk about later on in the presentation, it helps us take ownership of our learning. So we just feel like we can do something. So we're not just stuck because sometimes it's not always the greatest to hear that, like, hey, you're not doing so well. So just having something to do to help us be better is very empowering for us. And then overall, it improves long-term academic success because knowing what worked and what didn't work in one class helps students approach future classes more strategically and with greater self-awareness. I know this because from my freshman, sophomore year, I've taken things that I've learned in those classes and I've applied them to my junior and senior year, and they've just allowed me to realize like, okay, so this is what I need to do for the next time that I'm in a class like this or in a different class, or like this is what works for me, especially when it comes to like studying or taking notes or just like doing whatever. Because I know when I came into college, I didn't have a foundation of how to take notes, but as I tried out new things, tested out different theories and seeing how they work, I was like, okay, this is how I do it and this is what helps me most. So that's how feedback helps students in that sense. Now, moving on to what we really need. So, I would say the first thing would be clear expectations because it reduces confusion and anxiety. So, knowing what is expected helps students feel more confident and less stressed about assignments and exams. Again, I had this experience last semester where I wasn't necessarily sure how to do an assignment. And when looking on Brightspace through the syllabus, through the rubric, I didn't know what to do. And it was very stressful, it was kind of annoying. And it's just like, I just needed to know what needs to be done. And I didn't figure out anything until like the end of the semester, which wasn't really helpful for me, but it happened. Clear expectation encourages accountability and independence. Once you've set these expectations, students know what to expect when they're doing certain assignments. So like when you have like very thorough, a thorough breakdown of what you're expecting of us, what you want to see in an assignment, it helps us be more responsible for managing our time, meeting deadlines, and tracking our progress. I had a professor also last semester who was really great with setting. This is a different professor. setting expectations for us, she had a very thorough rubric which broke down everything that she wanted us to see. And then I could plan ahead and know like how much time I need for a certain assignment. Like, okay, I can start on Monday and I can be finished by Wednesday, the latest. And just breaking it up so it's not all overwhelming and so that I'm not behind. And then overall, it improves academic performance because once you know what to expect from a class, it prevents you from making mistakes or like misinterpretations, and it gives you enough time to ask professors about what they mean specifically about something that you don't understand. So my suggestion for that would be to provide a thorough breakdown of what you're looking for on Brightspace in the rubric section because it's really a great resource for students to use when doing assignments and when trying to figure out what you need. And it's also beneficial for professors because once you've outlined it for them, they won't feel the need to come email you or like ask you a lot of questions because you've already outlined what you'd want from them. Next thing is a big thing. So structure flexibility. And basically, this is just having something built into the class to help students when unexpected events happens in their lives. I know last semester or like last year in general, I was very sick. I got hit with pneumonia and that wasn't the greatest. And it took me out of class for about, I think, a week or two. And my professors that I worked with or that I communicated with, they really helped through that time because I had one professor who shared the movie that we were watching in class and asked a student to share their notes with me so I can stay on track. I had another professor help me reschedule some interviews that I had to do for the class, and then just things like that to help me stay on track and so I wasn't missing out in that so I can come back to class and know what's going on. So with structure so to put it in summary, structured flexibility helps students stay on track. So like giving notes or extensions, and that allows you to keep up with the coursework and stay engaged without falling behind. And it promotes academic confidence and participation because I know that whenever I miss class, I kind of feel lost when I don't know what's going on. So just having like the material or the assignments given to me, I feel like I'm there or like I was there and I still know what's going on in the class. So that really helps and it allows me to contribute to the actual discussion that we're having instead of just sitting back and trying to figure out what's going on. And
And
then
this was one of the top ones that the SCOLT Student Advisory Board really talked about. Almost, if not all, the advisory board said this was one of their top ones, really needing that flexibility from professors. Some students have invincible, illnesses or things like that, and it's taking them out of the class for whatever reason, and just really having the flexibility and that support from their professors was really kind of noted as a top priority for students.
to kind of continue, it also just creates a supportive learning environment. So when I say structured flexibility, I'm not saying that you should lower your course standards because students are still expected to complete the assignments. Whatever assignment that I didn't do while I was out, I still managed to do it. I just had like a little bit of an extension because at the end of the day, I do want to learn what's happening in class, and it wouldn't be fair for me to just not do an assignment but still pass the course. So it's not about lowering your expectation. It's just that with structured flexibility, you know as a student that your professors are willing to work with you during things that you can't control, and that makes you feel valued and supported, and then like, hey, I can talk to you and I can trust you and to tell you like, hey, I'm not doing okay and this is what I need, and hopefully you can support me in that. Because I do know I do have friends who sometimes they don't communicate with their professors and let them know like, hey, I'm sick, because they feel like their professor won't listen to them because they're set in stone. And it's just like, I don't want to tell them because it wouldn't make a difference. Whereas if you just offer this or just mention it or whatever in the class or just work with them so that they can see that like, hey, you are willing to help them during this, it would really help when it comes to learning and getting the material that they need. And it also tells you what's going on with the students so that you're not in the dark about why they aren't showing up to class or why they aren't completing XYZ assignments. Next, again, coming back with feedback, we'd like feedback that helps us grow. So again, feedback helps students recognize patterns in their work, which they can carry forward into future assignments and courses. It is really helpful to figure out what you did on one assignment and like what you did wrong on one assignment so that you can figure out how you can improve on the next assignment. Like, I remember when I was first here, I was in a class and I kept on getting the same grade over and over and over, not improving, not moving, nothing. I was just stagnant and I couldn't figure out what it was. and just talking to my professor, and she was like, okay, this is what you should do. It wasn't really the best advice, and I just had to keep trying to find different ways to get the grade that I wanted to, and eventually I did improve, but it's just that like originally she didn't give me any feedback, so I wasn't aware of what I was doing wrong. So like with feedback, it was really helpful to understand how to do better. So some suggestions that we came up with were like I'm sorry, constructive comments. So explaining how students avoid similar issues and building on their strengths. So like explaining why. Like it's great to hear that you did really well on one assignment, but can you explain like why or like what you saw that was like this was really great. Like this is what I want to see more of. And then also explaining the bad parts of the assignments, like the areas that need improvement, just explaining why it needs to be improved on and like what that student should do in the future. And something that found that was really helpful would be annotations on courseworks because I don't know if you guys know, but there's like this thing on Brightspace. I think it's called Turn It In Now. It's like this feature where you can leave like little post-it notes on the PDF forms for papers or like assignments. Or when I was a TA once, I when students would turn in PDF forms, I could leave like little comments section by section to tell them like, oh, this is how much points you gave, this is why I took off a point. And I feel like it makes it easier for students to connect feedback directly to the relevant parts of their writing or any work that they're doing. And that helps them see like, okay, this is what I should have done last time, or this is what I should do. I'm sorry, this is what I should do next time. And it also helps asking questions because sometimes when you just have like general feedback, it's hard to figure out where it applies and like what you should do next because it's like, okay, which specific section did I need help with? So annotations are really helpful and greatly appreciated. um, so the next thing would be inclusive and engaging teaching. That's what we'd want. And something would be like a safe space for making mistakes. That would be the best way to create an inclusive and engaging teaching environment because in order to actually participate in class and to feel like your opinions matter and to feel like what you're doing works, you just need to feel like this is like a safe space for making mistakes because you're learning for the first time and it's not always easy to hear that you're doing that you've answered something incorrectly. So one thing would be like the responses to how you respond to incorrect answers. I would say take a gentle, respectful correction, encourage your students to take academic no, sorry. I would recommend gentle, respectful corrections because that encourages students to take academic risks and try again. Because I know that if a professor just shuts me down completely when I take a risk or like try to answer a question I get it incorrectly, it kind of just shuts me down. I'm just like, okay, I'll just wait for someone else. So like sometimes when you hear the class is kind of just dead quiet and no one is saying anything, it's because maybe they're scared to say the wrong thing. So like the way that you respond to someone who has an incorrect answer kind of sets the standard for everyone and how they should participate or if they're willing to make the risk. So some suggestions would be like to acknowledge your efforts, like, oh, I see where you're coming from, then make corrections to their answer, like, I see where you're coming from, but maybe it's, or not even but maybe, but just like, I see where you're coming from, but this is how you do X, Y, and Z, and this is how you would explain that answer. Or you can ask clarifying or guiding questions. So, like, walk me through your thinking process so that you can see where they kind of strayed from the path to the right answer and just kind of help them find their way. Or you can redirect by asking other students for their thoughts. I've had professors be like, okay, thank you. And then they go to any other student that would like to respond. And then they kind of just play off of the student that has the most correct response, or they just cut it through and let them know, like, okay, so this is how you get to the answer and just like revisit the thing without basically demeaning or just like shutting down that kid from answering again. And it tells students that, like, okay, it's all right if I don't get the answer correct, but we're going to get to the right answer together. And then another thing for safe space, creating a safe space for making mistakes would be promoting respectful dialogue, so allowing students to express diverse viewpoints without fear of being shut down or judged. I had a professor, she said, I'd rather answer any question you have now than to let you leave with the wrong idea. And just by her saying that, it made me feel more encouraged, more motivated to participate because it's like, okay, she wants to hear our thoughts so that we don't go outside of the classroom and say the wrong thing to someone or just be incorrect. She wants to correct us in a nice way before we go out and get harshly corrected. And some suggestions for creating a respectful dialogue would be to set ground rules for class discussions. So that emphasize active listening, disagreeing respectfully, keeping focus on the topic, and then confidentiality, so like not repeating personal stories in class outside of the classroom, so that students know that like, hey, whatever is said in here stays in here, and if you disagree with someone, you just have to actually listen to them and keep it on the subject instead of hitting below the belt or just being rude and disrespectful, and so that it creates an environment where everyone can just talk to each other and to learn as one. And then some other suggestions for inclusive and engaging teaching would be something that I found really helpful was recapping the past lesson at the beginning of the class, because it creates easy opportunities for students to participate, especially shyer students, because once if you're just recapping what you did in the previous class, anyone can answer it. As long as you were there, you can have like a little tidbit about like, okay, so we talked about this part. It doesn't have to be this elaborate thing. It can just be one small thing just to show that you're learning and that you're paying attention in class. And if you're able to answer these easy recap questions, it'll help increase your comfortability in the class, because now it's like, okay, I can answer this question, now I can answer another question that's like slightly harder, or just allow you to take that risk because now you're comfortable speaking in class, which can be like a problem for a lot of students, just speaking up in front of all of these different people that they probably don't know until like later on in the semester. It also, recapping the last session also helps reinforce content and improve retention, because then you're seeing that students are actually learning and they're taking something from the classroom, no matter how small it is. Other suggestions for inclusive and engaging teaching would be in-class activities. So role playing, for one class, we had to pretend to be Congress and tackle a selected topic in class, which was literally anything that we were doing for that unit. Then there's group discussions or scenario-based learning, which is basically, I had a class where my professor put up different scenarios, and she had us all answer it, she had us all get up and answer based on what we felt was the right answer. And then we've had debates or just activities that actually stray away from just sitting in the classroom and being lectured to. Um, this is great for students because it acknowledges that students learn in different ways. So it's making content more accessible for everyone, because not everyone can just simply sit down and just like listen to you. Some people want to be more active and actually test out things or just to see things. Also, it fosters collaboration and teamwork, because when you have things like the role playing or the scenario based learning or debates or group discussions, you have students working together to come to an answer and just getting to know each other and actually talking to each other and learning how to work as a team and as a unit, which is something that we'll need in the future. Next. So next up would be real world relevance, which is just basically connecting what we're learning in class to the actual real world that we're in. So bridging the gap between theory and practice. So seeing classroom ideas, quote unquote, in action helps students understand not just what to do in the field, but how it's done in various real life contexts. I had a class once upon a time where we were learning about different theories or health promotion models, and we had to go out and look around campus or in our community to see how it was done. I remember just looking around and saying, like, okay, I always see the smoke-free signs in Oswego, but like, what else is there that we use that's I don't recognize as health promotion, but really is? And then I noticed, like, okay, even in the buildings, they have no smoking, and then even in the bathrooms, the simple things about washing your hands, that's a form of health promotion that a lot of people don't realize or don't take into consideration because we see it so much, or we just don't recognize it as something to be seen that as a theory. So that's why I said it increases awareness and critical observation, because you're able to see these real world examples and then you're seeing them around you and you can look through and be like, okay, that's actually what that is. That's that theory that's happening in action. Or even in psychology, there's a theory, sorry, the fundamental attribution error. And I remember learning about it and I was thinking about my actions and the way that I view other people. And I'm just like, okay, that's what that is. And just being able to recognize it was really cool, because it's like, okay, so what I'm learning actually does matter. It is happening in the real world. I might not be able to look at it and see it initially, but once I start to think about it, it's like, okay, that's what that is. And lastly, real world relevance also makes learning more engaging and memorable. So seeing course content on their phones, like scrolling through social media and being able to identify like, oh, this is what's happening, this is why people are responding that way, or in your community or on campus, it makes the material more interesting slash easier to remember, because you can make those connections that you probably don't think about. So, and then when it comes to studying, that also helps because, like, okay, I remember seeing the fundamental attribution error here, and this is what happened with it. And then when you're studying, you can just understand the theory a bit more than you would just learning about it. And then the last thing that we want would be faculty who listen and adapt because that creates a more supportive learning environment. When professors respond to students' feedback, such as posting lecture slides, providing review material, or adjusting the pace of the course, it shows that their needs matter, which increases trust and comfort in class and better academic outcomes. I've seen both of this in action during my time at Oswego, where I had a professor who didn't post slides and her pace was very hard to keep up with because she was switching slides constantly. So we didn't have time to write down anything. So it was very hard when it came to like the first exam or just like understanding what was going on in class because it was so flippy floppy. Like she just kept on switching slides, she kept on talking fast, and we just didn't know what was going on until someone in the class was like, hey, do you mind posting lecture slides? Hey, do you mind like slowing down like a little bit for us because it's kind of hard to keep up? And she was very respectful with it. And then she did actually start posting the slides for us. And she did slow down and she had check-ins with us and like, hey, would you like me to like slow down? Are you understanding the material that's going on right now? And then it was kind of easier to focus on the class and what to do and it was less stress inducing because now I know that I have if I miss something in class I can look back at on the slide. I can look back at it on another time outside of class. And then if I need her to slow down, I can be like, hey, do you mind slowing down? So it made it feel like, okay, things are better in class and I can breathe. And then that leads to better academic outcomes because now they know that they have access to the material and now they know that they can just speak up and say like, hey, can you slow down for me a little bit? Also, faculty who listen and adapt also supports diverse learning. Posting lecture slides and activities providing review material, recapping content, or adjusting course pace helps students who may process information differently, take longer to write notes, or need to revisit material to fully understand it. Similar to what I said about creating a more supportive learning environment, it just shows that you're taking into consideration the different people in your classes because I did have a professor whose teaching style was very different from what we normally had, and it was very interesting to say the least, and it was hard to keep up with what was going on in the class. I know I was rushing to take notes. I did take some of them and they did make some sense, but I did have a friend who was struggling because it wasn't her style in taking notes. She didn't understand how to do it, and I often had to share my notes. So it was just like if you could have these options available to students, and if your class allows something like that, like a more discussion based class is kind of hard to do stuff like this, but there's still ways to still ways to help students who are struggling. Like for instance, again, posting the slides, or I know for like discussion based class, in one of my classes, the professor had one person strictly take notes for everybody. So they would sit out in the discussion, but then everybody else would just talk during class and he'd switch it off to different people. So, like, if you have a discussion based class, that's one way that you can tackle that. And then just being creative with it so that students know that there's something there for them and that they can just have support when they need it or material to look at when it's time to study or to do it.
And another big thing that kind of the SCOLT committee had talked about too was making sure that faculty are using the Brightspace gradebook so that they can see how they're doing. Because a lot of times we've had students state that they may only have one exam in the whole course and they never know how they're doing. And that's a little concerning because students need to know and have that feedback. They need to be able to know where they're at, what the expectations are. So being very transparent and using that gradebook and Brightspace so they can see, and also it's something we need to do for starfish so that students know where they're at and we can kind of intervene if we need to. So that was something they noted too. Either maybe they've had professors that weren't using the gradebook, or maybe there was only one assignment for the entire course and they never knew how they were doing. It's really important that we kind of make changes in that regard.
So Finally, our message to you would be that students aren't just here to get grades. We're here to learn and grow. And when faculty support that journey, it really matters to us. It really matters to know that we're heard and that you guys are taking the time to actually like consider the different students in your classrooms. And I know I've been stressing like these are a lot of things that faculty can do. I know it's a relationship between students and faculty. Like you guys put in effort and we also have to put in effort to do what we can so that we can succeed. But these are just little tidbits for you to consider when the next semester comes or when starting classes. So thank you for listening, and I appreciate your time and effort. So any questions?
And we'll open it up for any questions.
Yeah, I had a question. First of all, thank you for taking the time to meet with us today after just graduating, right? You just graduated. I know it's a busy time, but thank you for presenting to us. I guess I could turn my camera on too. My question to you was, when it seems like a lot of times when you mentioned like students giving faculty feedback to make adjustments and make changes, that's another helpful piece of this. Um, I try my best to offer like opportunities for students to give me feedback. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on the best way to do that. So whether it's just like informal, in class in the moment type of feedback, or is it helpful to do like anonymous surveys, maybe a mix? I was just curious of your experience, what you think would be the best way to get your voice out there to your professor.
I would say anonymous feedback because that's when people are more honest with how they feel and like what they want in the class. But another way that you can do it, I recently had a professor, she literally had us schedule times to meet with her. It was mostly to talk about our grade, but she asked if there was any feedback for her that could be used in the class. And it was like a small point that we could get, or just like, okay, 5 points for meeting with me and just keeping me up to date about how you're doing and what you're doing. So that's one thing or
Yeah,
two.
I like that idea of like scheduling time to meet. I feel like sometimes when I do the anonymous feedback, maybe I'm not giving the students enough notice about it because maybe like they want longer to think about it or something like that. Because I feel like a lot of times I get like, oh no, it's good. Like, and so it's hard to get like that meaningful feedback. I'm like, no, I don't want you to just tell me it's good. Like, tell me your thoughts. So maybe giving them more scheduled times to do that so they could think about it beforehand would be helpful.
Or just like different questions. Because I know, like, in the course evaluation, it asks you basically the same question like three different times.
Yeah.
So that's really helpful to make people really think about it. Because, like, when you say, like, oh, how am I doing in class? Like, what's something that I can improve on? I'm like, I'm doing it in class. I don't really have anything to say. But maybe it's like, okay, what would you wish to see in this class that's not happening right now? Or like, what would you like to see? Or maybe just describing their ideal class or like what they like to see in any class in general to make it more broad to see if you can incorporate it into your class.
That's really helpful. Thank you. More
Yeah,
broad, general.
one thing I do too, Teresa, is I do the
Mhm.
anonymous, but I do, and I've gotten really great feedback with it, is kind of like a check-in anonymous Google form survey, and I give them specific questions, and then I leave them open-ended, and students actually do write in comments for me or things like that. And I call it kind of like a wellness check-in at the same time because I'm asking them, overall, like, how are you doing this semester? Are you feeling stressed? And I give them some multiple choice questions to answer, and it gives me kind of a pie chart of, if they're feeling overwhelmed in the semester, and then I have kind of at the end some open-ended, and it's worked really well, and I keep that anonymous, but I give them some kind of structure to the questions, and that's worked well for me too.
Okay. Thank you so much. I also think like timing might be
Yeah.
really important too, because most of the time I'm a staff member. I teach in the summer for the EOP summer program. But most of the time I am a staff member working with tutors. So I want I want their feedback on like how their work experience is going. I know it's a little different than like the academic setting, but I think now that I'm thinking about it, when I went into this presentation, I was thinking like, oh, this will be focused on like student feedback for me. And so I think it was lost on me, like, oh, I should be giving them more feedback more frequently, and especially like in a job setting. So I'm glad to have gotten that reminder. Like, it's just as important for me to be giving them feedback. So thank you.
And I think even with like wanting kind of feedback on how their work is going, at the same time, it aligns like with academics, right? Because sometimes the work aspect can
Hmm.
be, you know, a struggle, which may be taking away from their academics or vice versa. If they're stressed, it's great to kind of really like build that rapport and see what's going on outside of their classes. How is the work going? How is this? How do you think you can better kind of time manage maybe? Because maybe there's some guidance or support in those kind of hard and soft skills of just, well, how are you doing your time management? Are you planning things out, or what does that look like? And that can really help guide students and also kind of mentor them in that
Yeah.
regard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you so much for the advice.
Thank you. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Gabby. Gabby was a valued member of SCOLT. So both Michelle and Teresa, if you have any students that you think would be a good member for SCOLT, we have to kind of rebuild because a lot of our students have graduated. So definitely pass along a name if you're interested. And it's something that we've been doing this is the second year we've done it now. And we find it really important, you know, as a committee on learning and teaching, it's very vital to have the students' perspectives, right? This is who we're doing it for. So it's been a really great asset, and they've done some really great presentations everywhere from best practices to AI and lots of different things. So don't hesitate, and anyone who's watching, if you want to pass along a name for a new student to be on, that'd be great. And thank you so much, Gabby, for coming and presenting for us.
Of course.
Thank you, Gabby.
Thank you.